and they meet an income threshold. They get to start to pay off their debt at a lower tax rate, and it means that higher education is quite affordable for students. The federal government in Australia contributes to student fees, but this is only for domestic students, and so international students have to pay full fees, and they have to pay them up front. But even though we've got these systems in place for accessing payment plans for higher education, other online providers offer what could be perceived to be similar education much, much cheaper. If you think about the information that you can get from Google or from providers like Skillshare or Coursera, they're offering small, short courses for a very cheap price. It's bite-sized, it's quick, it's easy, there's already light at the end of the tunnel. It's appealing to a student who might be time poor and also financially poor, but at the end of the day, they're not given a qualification. They don't receive the qualification that the higher education can provide. So there will always be a demand for universities and a demand for higher education institutions, even though we know that there's a whole bunch of providers out there that are not necessarily credible or verifiable and easily accessible. Despite all of that, the higher education sector is still going to be in demand. Students will and employers will seek formal qualifications, and they will want credible, reliable qualifications and qualifications that are based on research and based on currency, and that employers and students can say is a quality qualification. Even though there is a trend to the short course world, we are still seeing globally more university graduates than ever before. More people are studying than ever before because it's easy access, but also people are starting to recognize that the short courses that are easily and cheaply available are not necessarily going to provide the same level of qualification as an institution like a university. And so the university system will still always be necessary. However, in order to compete with these environments, the universities may need to rethink their costing models and how they charge, what money they charge for their education. And so there is a thought now in the sector that universities will have to make money through other means than by student contributions. So whereas a student would pay for the cost of their degree, students are becoming more unwilling to pay the prices that are being demanded. And so that there is a view that the higher education institutions will have to fund their own existence in other ways, and that way is primarily through research. Universities tend to be engaged in research, and the trend is to commercialize some of that research, so make it available commercially where people can buy access to the research, and then the research if it's wider, made available more widely than the higher education sector, the research will bring in a lot more income than keeping it within the institution. And so one commercialized research project could arguably create income for, say, 10,000 students. And so students would be able to be given a subsidized place and so have access to the university without having to pay the costs that they're currently paying. It becomes a cycle that then pays for itself. At least that's the expectation and hope of the future. Globally, the type of work that our graduates or that any graduate is being engaged in is changing. The work that universities are teaching students to engage in is going to be changing based on the changing society, the demands of society. So the universities obviously need to keep up with those trends. Professional workers, the trends at the moment is that the professional workers need new skills. They need the skills of virtual collaboration, innovative thinking, doing more with less. And we are seeing a trend that employers don't necessarily care about the name of the qualification or the qualification itself, unless it's aligned with accreditation, and I'll talk about that. Employers tend to want graduates with skills, and they want to know the students can do the job. So that changes things a little bit for universities, because universities have in the past churned out graduates with discipline-specific knowledge, and it's the graduate attributes, the communication, the teamwork, the digital literacy skills, the softer skills that weren't really being assessed, but were taught incidentally to the actual content of being a university student. So the trend is to ensure that these other skills, the problem-solving skills, the innovation skills, the communication skills, are embedded more overtly in the higher education qualifications. And that can then be personalized to the discipline, so that whatever it is the student is studying, they still get that quality of qualification, but in addition to the softer skills that the employers are now seeking. Universities are being forced to show relevance to the careers that the graduates are being employed in, or the alternative is that employers will employ those people that they think can do the job, and not necessarily those who are qualified to do the job. We come back to the trend of getting these online certificates. The online certificates are easy to get. It's getting easier. They're affordable. They're quick. They often have limited assessment, whereas a university qualification takes a bit longer. It's a bit harder. You have to work for it. However, the upside of that is that the university qualification is credible. It's verifiable, which is really important when we start to think about the world of digital badges, and it needs to be shown to be relevant. So if a university qualification is a quality qualification and provides the skills necessary to do the job, then an employer is likely to choose a graduate with a university qualification over a graduate who has a series of certificates. Which leads nicely onto accreditation. So this is the accreditation world, is where the universities have an advantage. The university, if a degree is offered by a university, there is a status and reputation that is associated with the name of a university. So if it's a university offering a degree, it's likely that that degree will be perceived to be recognised, credible, verifiable, and quality qualification. And employers do tend to understand the volume of learning that is required in obtaining a university qualification versus the level of work that's required in obtaining a short course or a micro-credential. The marketplace, though, is becoming really crowded and confusing, and the terms are being used inconsistently. So the term micro-credential or digital badge or qualification, we're starting to use those terms in the sector quite inconsistently, and there's no real agreed understanding of what those terms actually mean. So a micro-credential, for example, is a partial academic qualification. It's usually criteria based, the micro-credential, and it's part of a future trend, which I'll talk about soon, is the stackable micro-credentials, which gives students the opportunity to build a personalised qualification. Micro-credentials can be accredited by universities, although we're seeing some inconsistent effort in the sector in relation to that. But digital badges don't necessarily have the same rigor as a micro-credential. Often there's no assessment associated with a digital badge. And although digital badges look great on a CV, on a curriculum vitae, and they also, you can put a digital badge into your digital backpack, which the students can take from employment to employment and have a whole stack of digital badges that can look very impressive. The employers and graduates themselves are still learning what this actually means, what it means to have digital badges. The sector is still learning what it is that a digital badge actually represents. One student, for example, might collect a whole bunch of digital badges, but they're all digital badges that took minutes to complete, whereas another student might only have one digital badge that represents a bachelor's degree, but on paper it's just one digital badge compared to the other student who's got pages and pages of digital badges, but it's not at the same level or the same quality. So that leads us to industry accreditation. And in Australia, some industries will not employ people unless they have an accredited qualification. So doctors or lawyers, nurses, teachers all need to have an accredited qualification from a university, that has passed the accreditation requirements for that qualification in order to be employed in those industries. That places the universities in a really strong position to produce graduates for those particular career paths. And another advantage for universities is that the opportunity to create these accredited degrees where the micro-credential or the digital badge can't compete at the same level. Usually a digital badge or a micro-credential is going to be insufficient to satisfy industry accreditation requirements, although that's not necessarily always the case. But certainly we're seeing trend-wise in Australia that the accreditation from the industry is aligned with a university level qualification. So with all of this pressure to gain university qualifications comes pressure to obtain them illegally. In Australia, academic integrity is treated very seriously, and students can be expelled from the institution if they engage in academic misconduct. Legislation has recently been passed in Australia that makes it an offence to provide assignment help for students if the students have to pay for that help, and that term has been called contract cheating. So the term contract cheating is where students actually pay someone to do their assignment for them. In Australia, a lot of the contract cheating websites have been officially blocked. You can't access them in Australia, but you can access them if you are an international student in your own country. And if it's not been blocked in your own country, you can still access these contract cheating websites. So in Australia, as an alternative, most institutions will provide support, student support and assignment help support internally within their own institution, or through recommended providers like there's a firm called Studiosity that's used in Australia that helps students write their assignments, but is not contract cheating. Globally, we're seeing trends in companies like Turnitin. Now, Turnitin is a plagiarism checker tool. When a student submits an assignment, the Turnitin can check automatically whether or not the content has been submitted elsewhere, compares it to the student's work and provides a report back to the lecturer to see whether or not the material has been used elsewhere and where that material came from. What it doesn't check for is if someone else has written the original work on behalf of that other person. So now we're seeing cheating detection tools that can check writing style, it can check editing time, it can check the IP submission location to see whether or not it's inconsistent with previous assessments that the student has submitted. So for example, if a student has a 0 editing time on a document and it's submitted from a country other than the country where they're currently living and accessing their learning management system from, it leads to the conclusion that perhaps there's some contract cheating involved. From a sector perspective, a higher education perspective, this is about integrity, and it's a benefit for universities who can then say to employers that the students have actually earned their qualification, that they've not bought their qualification, but they've obtained it through hard work and through assessment. But there's no such assurance for non-university qualifications, for short courses, for digital badges, for online certificates. It's the same reasoning for research integrity. And in Australia, we have something called the National Code for the Responsible Research, and the universities are accountable to that code. And it means that universities can lose their accreditation if they allow students to engage in unethical or inaccurate research. And so graduates can be assured that they are graduating from an institution that has a quality and ethical qualification being provided, and employers get that same assurance. Getting there, I promise. Open access. So this is about access to materials. As the sector has moved online, higher education, it has made it harder and more challenging to access materials for students, or the reverse of that is that students are now choosing to source information for their assignments or whatever by searching on Google. Usually, libraries will have access to credible material behind a paywall, where in order to access that material, a person needs to be a student or they need to pay a subscription. The idea behind that was that the paywall protected quality, but what was found was that there was a pressure on universities to pay to publish. And so a lot of researchers were paying journals in order to publish their research, and there was a lack of peer review and oversight in the quality of the information that was being made available on open access. Recently, however, there's been a trend to increase the robustness of peer review on open access, and some of the really big name publishers like Elsevier and Springer have made their journals available via open access, so that they're no longer hidden behind a paywall. And what this has done is change the way that the sector can access the information that students need in order to complete their assessments. So the argument against textbooks, for example, was that textbooks actually became dated fairly quickly and took a long time to publish. And so by the time the students got their hard copy of a textbook, it was already probably 2 years since that textbook had been written. Whereas journal articles on open access could be made available immediately and very quickly, and it was the credibility and the accuracy that was the problem. They're moving away from the concerns with open access that once used to exist. However, it does mean that we have, as a sector, have a responsibility for teaching students how to access credible and verifiable sources when they are doing their assignments. So a Google search, for example, is perhaps not the best way for a student to gather information to complete an assignment, but then the obligation is on the universities to teach students how to assess the quality of the information that they are sourcing in order to complete their assignments or to complete their research. Okay, so future trends. So the trends into the future for higher education is for the student to personalize their own student journey, to study what they want, when they want, how they want, and for free. Universities can respond to this demand by embracing the micro-credential trend and having micro-credentials that are accountable, verifiable, and credible, and also that are stackable. That is, that the micro-credentials can build onto each other so that the student can see a suite of micro-credentials, know which ones they need to complete in order to satisfy the requirements of a degree. So there's no compromise on the volume of learning, and there's no compromise on the quality of learning. It just makes that learning more bite-sized. And instead of having a unit that might run for a period of 12 to 15 weeks, it might instead be a whole bunch of different modules that run for 1 week or 6 hours or something. And so the university then needs to have the capacity to map these micro-credentials and ensure their quality so that the students can still have the credibility that the universities, the sector, has come to be known for. The universities, of course, have the reputation for providing quality qualifications, and the danger with this trend is that reputation will be lost unless the micro-credentials or the short courses or whatever it is that the universities do can somehow be shown to be as robust as the degrees in which the university is currently offering. Okay, so that's it from me. I'm very happy to take questions and participate in some chats about this. It's a fascinating time to be working in the higher education sector. I'm going to stop my sharing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lawson, for the insight. Now, this is a time for you, audiences, to give some feedback, or maybe you would like to share your experiences and also ask some questions related to what Dr. Lawson has already explained to us just now. You can raise your hand, and then would you please open your camera to participate with us today? All right, or maybe you can write down your questions on the chat box. While waiting for the questioners, is there any? Would you please raise your hand? Bapak Fahmi Fauzi would like to address a question to Dr. Lawson. Right. While waiting for the other questions, actually, there are some of questions that come up in my mind as well, Dr. Lawson. Actually, in Indonesia, the industrial world experiencing this very significant setback, especially in small and medium enterprises, which are actually the main sector who observe our graduates. So what do you think the best medium for university or lecturers can provide to connect students and graduates to the industrial internet? Maybe you can share what you have done at your university.
So do you mean connectedness between the universities and the industries?
Yes. How can the Siki University try to connect the graduates to the industry so they can have a more opportunity to know there's some of the work that provided for them?
I think that's a fantastic question. And what we try and do, and I think it's consistent in the sector in Australia, is a concept called work integrated learning. And a lot of our qualifications embed a work placement with an industry provider. And so, for example, nursing or teaching, but also industries that are, so agriculture or in my own field, in journalism or public relations, the students are required to undertake a work placement as part of their assessment. We then link the assessment to that work placement, but there's a flexibility in how the students present that assessment. The benefit for that is that the students do a work placement and can develop a CV of their experience that they can take when they graduate, but it also allows the employer to see the students and what the students are learning, and to be able to, some of the employers will offer a student a job immediately, which is fantastic, or that they can see the type of content that is being taught to students. The second part to that answer is we try very hard to engage industry in the development of our curriculum. So when our curriculum is under a renewal, so we have to refresh our curriculum every 5 years, then we invite industry to participate in that process. So if the industry is involved in they don't know anything about higher education, but they certainly know about the content and what they want from their graduates. And so that process is informed by representatives from the industry.
Okay. Maybe we also can do the same thing. In terms of the curriculum, some of the major has already tried to connect all of the content in our curriculum to the industry, but not all. Actually, that will be one of our problems. Thank you so much for the sharing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu semua, would you please participate with us with the open cam? You can raise your hand. Right. Maybe I would like to invite Mutiara Chitra. She mentions that she has some questions to Dr. Lawson. Please, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wahi Nancy. Actually, it's a very interesting topic from Dr. Lawson. And what I want to ask is about the technology disruption that we feel in our learning. As you know, the technology advancement is going very rapidly, so it could affect our attention, our concentration, and also our focus to do one thing in the one time. So we could like do a multitasking, and as what we read, we know that it could harm our brain function. So Dr. Lawson, is there any strategy to overcome these disruptions in higher education? So we are, as the university students, can still have a critical thinking, broad knowledge, and do not rely fully on the technology. That's my question, Dr. Lawson and Dr. Hinexi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, another fantastic question. The research in this area is really interesting. What we're seeing globally is that students, younger people who are what we would call digital natives, who've grown up with the digital technology all around them, actually tend to have a shorter attention span. They're less likely to be able to sit still for longer. And so to sit in a lecture is very uncomfortable for them. And so the response to that is to make the lectures a little bit shorter. In terms of engagement of technology on multitasking, again, this is a really interesting concept, because the multitasking is not necessarily effective, and you said so yourself. The students think that they can concentrate doing a couple of things at once, but actually they can't. And so the solution to that is to allow the students to use their mobile devices, but in a controlled way. So the mobile devices or the electronic devices or whatever form part of the pedagogy, and they form part of the activities in the class setting, so that the students are then have to use the technology in order to participate in the class. So that stops them from using the technology as a distraction from being present in class, but it also gives the students the comfort that they've got the technology with them, or they've got access to the information or the device with them at the same time. There was another point that I was going to make in relation to that, and I have just forgotten what that was. If I remember, I will say, but I think that's actually a really insightful question. It certainly is a problem that we also see in terms of the students not necessarily engaging fully and being distracted easily, I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lawson. Is that or you would like to give any further feedback, Mutiara? All right.
Thank you, Dr. Lawson.
Thank you. All right. You're still welcome, Bapak Ibu, to have questions, or maybe you would like to share some of your experiences that you've figured out. Maybe you have a kind of disruptions on your institutions, and then how to solve it. And maybe we can relate and also share with Dr. Wilson here, so she can give her opinions about it. Is there any other questions?
Yes, Nancy, you can see the chat. There are questions from the movie.
Okay. Sure. There is some.
Oh, Mr. Muhammad Zudi, sir.
Yes, please.
Please.
You are allowed to open your camera, please. Yeah, please open your camera.
Wahyuning, Pak Zudi also raised hand just now.
Pak Zudi.
Please, Bapak, could you please open your camera and directly address your questions? Would you please spotlight yourself as well so everybody can see you? Pak Ahmad Wahyudin, is that you? Yes, please. Yes, Bapak, please.
Pak Zudi, Wahyuning, Pak Zudi bukan Ahmad
Pak
Wahyuning.
Zudi, your turn. Pak Zudi, you can.
Pak Zuhdi or Ahmad Zuhdi? There are two Zuhdi here.
Oh, Pak Muhammad Zudi first.
Oh, Muhammad Zuhdi first. Okay.
Okay.
Please, Pak Muhammad Zuhdi.
Thank you. And hi, Celeste. It's nice to have you here, and thank you for making your time to be with us, and also for the interesting lecture. I really enjoy your lecture. And I have a question though. I think I would like to hear more about how universities in Australia respond to the challenges that you just mentioned. I think the world is moving toward micro things, like, you know, professors are now requested not writing books, rather to write articles in journals. Even singer, they don't release full album of 20 or so songs. They release just singles, you know, independently. And I think this trend also occurs in higher education, although we still recognize 4 years, 3 years degree programs like bachelor, masters, or doctorate degrees. But I think the programs that you just mentioned, either digital badge or micro credential, is going its way, unless we need, or someone needs, a formal degree for formal jobs like lawyer or teacher, lecturer. Unless they need degrees for those kind of jobs, other positions, other works only needs certain sort of skills or competencies that they don't need a full 4 years degree to get. They just need probably 6 months or 1 year short program and get sort of competence certificates, and then they can go to work right away or open their own works at home. So what do you think, how universities in Australia respond to this trends? And then I think here in Indonesia, we also need to sort of learn more about this trend. Thanks, Celeste.
I think you're exactly right. The trend is definitely to micro credentials. What needs to and what will happen is that the degrees where accreditation is required, so doctors, lawyers, teachers, they will still exist. But what we will see is that the degrees where it's not required to have a degree in order to work in that industry, they will start to be dominated by shorter qualifications or more personalized qualifications, where students can specialize in one aspect or another within that qualification type. The advantage that the university sector has is its reputation for quality. And because we have such a stringent oversight in how education is developed and curriculum is designed, the credentials or the micro credentials that universities will develop will have a stronger reputation than the micro credentials that are being developed by other digital providers. And we have a window of opportunity, I think, in the sector to develop micro credentials, because they will be in demand and they will be coming. But if the sector develops the micro credentials, and we all use the right terminology or consistent terminology when we're talking about them, then the other providers will have to show the credibility of their micro credential in some way that is consistent with the way that the university sector can show the credibility of the micro credential. But I think that the trend, you're right, the trend is that students will have stackable micro credentials. They will go into some sort of marketplace where they will choose micro credentials, and they'll do those micro credentials, and they will then stack them all up and develop and create their own degree that is personalized to them and to their interests. And that is the trend that we are seeing. The question over that whole trend is the one of quality. How can we have the oversight of the development of the micro credential? It's an issue that Australia is grappling with right at this moment. At the moment, we still haven't settled on an official definition of what a micro credential actually is. We haven't settled on a definition of what the measurement for quality will be. And so it is the sector is really trying hard at the moment to define this future type of teaching, because that is what the demand is. The students want short, quality, bite-sized chunks of a qualification that they can then group together to give them an overall qualification. So the students still, and the demand is still for a degree, but not necessarily enrolling in a degree and then completing the degree before you get the qualification. They want these little bite-sized mini qualifications as they're going through.
Very interesting. Can I have a follow-up? Waiting.
Yeah, sure, Papa. Sure, please.
Now, I don't know how we see this, but do you think it's possible that some degree programs will no longer available or no longer having participants, and people are more interested in joining this certification program? And I mean the question will be whether these degree programs like librarians, I think you don't need a BA to get to become a librarian. You need some sort of certificate for a year to be trained as a professional librarian. Or the question is whether these micro credential programs will be on top of the bachelor degree, or it will be slowly will replace the bachelor degree for a certain programs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably more likely. I think it will replace it. However, I think that there will still be, I think what we're actually asking here is, how do you enroll a student? Do you enroll a student by qualification, or do you enroll a student by the unit of study? And how do you then calculate what that student is studying? Because I think that what the micro credentials will result in is a series of students who then basically choose their own degree. They choose their own structure. And so they may not have enrolled in a Bachelor of Arts, but they might do enough qualifications or enough volume of learning to satisfy the requirements for a Bachelor of Arts. But then the question is, does the student enroll in the Bachelor of Arts, or does the student enroll in 24 different micro credentials that then results in a Bachelor of Arts? And I think that that's something we have to wait and see what the students do. Do the students still want, so yes, they want these bite-sized chunks. Yes, they do. Do the students still want to enroll in a Bachelor of Arts first, or do they want to enroll in these bite-sized chunks first and then group them together to get themselves a qualification? We're definitely seeing in the sector that the qualification is still very important. The academic qualification is still very important, but the students are not necessarily wanting to enroll in the qualification because that's too long. That's 3 years, that's 4 years, it's too long. And so they're wanting to enroll in much shorter micro credentials, but then be able to count them towards a qualification.
Thanks, Celeste.
Thank you so much, Bapak Muhammad Zuhdi, for the very excellent questions. Now, I would like to invite, well, before that, I would like to read a question which is already written down on the chat box. Allow me to have the share screen to you all, Bapak Ibu. So this is a question came from Bapak Muhbib Abdul, yeah, Bapak Muhbib Abdul. He would like to ask about the role of CSR, or corporate social responsibility, in engaging and supporting students and lecturers research in developing curriculum of universities in your country, Australia. Maybe you can explain us about the best practice of how to do so. So would you please share to us, Dr. Lawson? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we certainly have industries that are engaged in corporate social responsibility, and we have it's a kind of, my mind is going into a couple of different directions to answer this question, because some of it is one part of my mind goes to the research, where a lot of the funding for research comes from larger organizations, and they want to be seen to be supporting university research, and so they provide money to universities in order to conduct research. The national code for research that we have in Australia states that it doesn't matter where the money comes from to conduct the research must still be conducted ethically and with integrity. And so that means that if the findings of the research is not what the organization wanted, then they will have to understand that the findings of the research is the findings of the research. So we don't have the businesses can't say to the universities, here is money, do your research, but make sure you find something that supports us. So we can't say that. On the other side, the other part of the answer to that question relates to the curriculum development. And we absolutely involve industry, and a lot of industry are really keen to be seen to be involved with the universities to help inform the type of information that is developed and provided to students. But the ultimate accountability for the development of that curriculum lies with the institution. So the organizations can say, yes, we're involved with the development of the curriculum, but the decision as to what that curriculum will be rests with the university. And so we have a very clear distinction. Even though the industry is involved, they're not actually telling us what the content is going to be. The accountability for that, developing that content, lies with the university. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, right. Thank you. Now, I would like to open one more chance to have a questions. Would you please raise your hand and open your camera? One more question, if there is any. Right. Okay. So, all right. Yes, sir, please. Please, there is someone who raised a hand over there. I cannot see your name. I'm sorry. So would you please spotlight yourself and open your camera? That will be the last question for today.
Thank you. I'm Marisa. I'm Magister students of Islamic student 2021. I want to ask to Dr. Telis, as we know that in some country, COVID are decreased. So what do you think about the system of education for the future after pandemic era? Should we continue should we continue online system study or back to face-to-face or offline system? Where is better for the next era? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And as that question is receiving a lot of debate, certainly in the higher education sector globally. There was a study recently about whether or not the online or whether or not the face-to-face lecture is going to just go away, or whether there's going to be an ongoing demand for face-to-face lectures and face-to-face learning. And there's a lot of debate as to what the future will be in that space. And at the moment, the dominant thought is that students want to learn, a lot of students want to learn face-to-face. They want to learn in groups, in classrooms, in lectures. They want to have that personal interaction with staff and with tutors, but not everyone. So whilst there will always be a demand for face-to-face education, students are going to be a lot more choosy about whether or not they engage in it. So they might say, oh, I don't want to go to class today, I'll watch the video. But then the next day they might say, you know what, I'd really like to go to class today. So the demand for face-to-face will always be there, and how we manage that as a sector and as an institution remains to be seen. I think there needs to be some sort of equity put in place so that if a student chooses to go to class, but another student chooses to learn online, that they have an equivalent experience. So a student who chooses to study only online and not come to class is not disadvantaged by making that choice. And if we can ensure equity between studying face-to-face or studying online, I think you'll have students who will dip in and out of both modes. Otherwise, you'll find, or what they're saying in the research is that the students who study only online will feel as though they're disadvantaged if they're not getting the same service as a student who is participating face-to-face. But there will always be a demand for students to study face-to-face, but now there is also increasing demand for students to be able to choose whether or not they want to. So they're not to go just back to face-to-face and not have an online option is probably not going to be the way to go. I think that universities will always have some form of online option, and what the universities are going to be forced to do is ensure that the online option and the face-to-face option is equitable. So that's a challenge, and how we meet that challenge is yet to be seen. But certainly when the option is back to face-to-face, a lot of students will choose to come back, but some will not. Some will prefer to study online. It's a really debatable issue right at this moment in time. Really good question.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Arisa, for the questions, and also Dr. Lawson for the sharing and also the answers. Right, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, that will be the end of the question and answer sessions. I would like to address my greatest appreciations to Bapak Muhammad Sudi and Mbak Mutiara Citra, Bapak Mufti Abdul, and Mbak Arisa for the questions and participations today. Actually, after all of the questions have been answered, now we come up to the end of the session. But before that, Dr. Lawson, we would like to have your permissions. Would you please share your PowerPoint to the committee, and we ask your permission for that? That will be very grateful for us.
I'd be very happy to give you permission for that. I can send a copy of my PowerPoint through.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, we would like to address our greatest thanks for Dr. Lawson for the very deep insight. We look forward to seeing you again on the other events in the future, Dr. Lawson. Right, this is the end of the sessions, but before we close, we would like to address certificates, actually a certificate of appreciation from the committee to you, Dr. Lawson. And we invite Ibu Dr. Sururin MAG to hand over your certificate. Please welcome Ibu Dr. Sururin MAG. Oh, she is not here, and maybe would like to.
Yeah, excuse me, Pak Zudi mungkin ya, Pak Bu Wayu.
Okay, right. Bapak Dr. Zuhdi Muhammad Zuhdi.
I think better from the study program, chair of the study program, or the secretary of study program, the host of the event.
Okay, that will be Ibu Dr. Erba Rosalina, probably. Okay, we invite Ibu Dr. Erba Rosalina to hand over the certificate to our speaker today.
Sekarang ada itu, dia terlambat itu.
Would you please join us, Ibu Dr. Erba Rosalina?
Where is she?
Are you there?
Then
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Stan, there you are. Yeah, please, Ibu. Okay, I will.
But we are on behalf of the Magister, especially in educational programs, say thank you to Celeste Lawson, Miss Celeste Lawson, after presenting your subject today, and hope maybe to another time we can meet together again and say Assalamualaikum. Maybe you can ask our question, and thank you very much for your presentations.
Yeah.
This is our certification, our certificate for you. Yeah,
Bukan yang ini.
please.
It is not. Oh,
Thank you very much. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Celeste Lawson. See you again for another change. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Dr. Erba Rosalina, for hand over the certificate of appreciation. Okay, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, that will be the wrap up of our sessions for today's Studium General. And on behalf of the committee, I am as the moderator, Wahyuningsi today, once again would like to send the greatest appreciations to the speakers and to all of the participants, and hope that we can meet again in other opportunities and events. And by saying Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, I'd like to close the sessions. And then I wish everybody have a very good day today. And now I will return the agenda to the MC, back to Mutiara Citra. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you very much, Celeste. Yeah, your brilliant ideas to share with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
next time you have
Yeah.
to do it offline, Celeste.
Yes, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator, Dr. Yunensi, and also our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Celeste Wilson, for the remarkable discussion about our today's topic on university challenges and opportunities in disruption era. So we come to the end of our agenda for today. The prayer that will be led by Dr. Royani. Before we pray, maybe we can take a picture together. So I request for all audiences in this Zoom to turn on the camera and give our best smile to Dr. Lawson so we can do a screenshot, our friend screen. Okay. Okay, thank you for turning on the camera. Let me count for 1, 2, 3. Okay, wait, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm sorry, there is a chicken voice inside my house. Okay. Oops. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Okay, that's we come to the end of our agenda, and we also already took a picture together. We will pray together. That will be led by Dr. Royani. So please welcome Dr. Royani to lead the prayer today.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, the participant of Studium General, let's close this event by reading prayer together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Hamdan yuwaffi ni'amahu wa yukafi mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu min baghi jalali wal karim wa dhil sultani. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Allahumma inna ala dzikrika wa syukrika wa husni ibadatik. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'an wa rizqan thayyiban wa amalan mutaqabbalan. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alaina innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin nabiyyi wa ala alihi wasallam. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Rani, for leading our prayer today and close our agenda as the Studium General. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the committee of this Studium General, we thank all of you for your time and great participation. And for the information and reminding the audiences, please do not forget to fill the attendance form in the chat box we sent in this Zoom meeting. And the certificate will be sent to the email that was written in the form. So last but not least, I apologize for any mistake and have a great day. May our meeting and discussion today will bring change in the better quality of education in Indonesia and also strong bond of collaboration between Indonesia and Australia. Thank you so much, Dr. Lawson, Dr. Wahinengsi, and all lecturers in the Master of Faculty Educational Sciences. Thank you. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Celeste.
Yeah. Thank
Bu
you.
Ratna itu kok jadi partisipan sih?
Iya, itu salah. Wah Yuning, salah itu, Wah Yuning. Enggak sayang mana sertifikatnya itu nggak dilihat dulu. Itu. Nanti direvisi, ya udah 3 kali revisi, lupa udah dikasih, lupa dia yang pertama kayaknya yang dikarikan. Aduh, maklum lah.
Double.
Salah di Wayundengnya, Pak. Enggak apa-apa. Nanti kita kasih yang benar.
Langsung dikirim aja.
Ya, dikirim yang udah sebenarnya udah direvisi. Mohon maaf Pak Yudi ya.
Ya, ya.
Iya.
Pak Zudi, terima kasih Pak Zudi.
Sama-sama.
Udah
Terima kasih
hadir.
Makasih
semua.
banyak Pak Dudi. Bagus nanti kita undang offline ya Pak Dudi.
Iya, katanya Bu Erba mau ke Queensland.
Iya, iya kita mau Pak. Magister Pak. Magister mau ke Queensland. Mudah-mudahan mahasiswanya juga mau ikut.
Iya, boleh Pak Zudi dilanjutkan.
Iya, nanti kita rencanakan.
Nah,
Oke, makasih
Oke,
banyak.
makasih
ya.
pamit ya.
Ya,
terima
makasih
kasih
ya.
Pak sudah
Terima kasih.
Masih
diingat
Ustaz,
semuanya.
Ustaz Judi.
Sadrayani, makasih doanya makbul insyaallah.
Amin, amin.
Amin, amin, amin.
Ya, terima kasih semua
Terima
partisipan.
kasih. Ya.
Pak Roy, Bundo,
Mahasiswa, Bapak Ibu
Azhar,
dosen, ya.
mahasiswa MPAI banyak sekali terlibat hari ini.
Ya, Pak Kadir, Wadek, makasih banyak.
Thank you. You are welcome, Pralatna.
Pak Kadir pulang Pak Kadir. Jangan
Yes.
Alhamdulillah,
Kita sudah di bandara
Bawa,
ini.
bawa oleh-oleh, bawa oleh-oleh.
Iya.
Pak Kadir di mana? Bu?
Di Babel.
Oh iya,
Kita sudah di
Kadir di
bandara.
Babel.
mau kembali.
udah terasa berenang di pantai, Bundo.
Ya.
Pak Roy, terima kasih
Bundo ke
banyak ya.
kampung nggak?
Tiara. Ya, Wahyuning. Pertanyaannya hari
Pak
satu.
Tiara, terima
Ya.
kasih. Bu Nengki, terima kasih Pak Roy. Sudah ada YouTube-nya ya, silakan dibuka.
Iya, oke, sip.
Sudah ada, alhamdulillah.
Ya, terima kasih Nanda semua, Pak Abdul Ghafur. Pak Zah, di mana Pak Zah?
Jadi jalan.
Iya, oke. Baik ya,
Nah,
kita lihat
kita
ya, terima
Pak
kasih
Mubin
banyak
ini
ya,
tuh.
partisipasinya.
Pak Mubin, terima kasih.
Iya, insya Allah nih ada nanti sertifikat ya yang udah ada di link yang
Bu
sudah.
Wahyu Nengsi, makasih. Bu Mutiara, makasih.
Ya.
Ya, sama-sama. Makasih Bapak Ibu juga. Mohon
Ayo
izin
nih,
pamit ya, Bu.
Bunda udah chat juga dia di WA di mana tuh.
Diganti Bundo ya, nanti biar share sekalian sama itunya.
Iya kan itu
Sama
biasalah
surat-surat.
technical problem itu biasa, apalagi dia buru-buru nggak masalah. Oke, nanti kita kasih yang terbaiknya untuk beliau ya.
Iya, Bundo. Kelihatan loh tadi Bundo, Masya Allah. Partisipan ya, Bundo. Masya Allah.
Nggak dilihatnya dulu.
Itu dalam bikinnya dalam semalam ya.
Iya,
Iya, semalam lah pagi.
ada 3 soalnya tadi Bu Erba. Yang pertama
Iya.
ketiga. Jadi bingung, yang mana nih yang dipilih?
Ya, yang ketiga yang terbaru, jadi dia udah download. Jadi mungkin yang download yang pertama aja, yang ketiga salah mengambil kali. Sebenarnya udah ada yang bagusnya. Oke, sip. Terima kasih semuanya ya, pamit ya.
Bunda.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Terima kasih.
wabarakatuh. Maaf atas segala kekurangannya.
Ya, Bu.
Hmm.